Here we have another ex-Christian, Mindshift. Again, he's great at debunking the Bible, but he still suffers from the religion of woman worship. Now, we're going to correct him. Let's get into this. Mary Wollstonecraft versus biblical view of women. Right. Let's hear this.
London in 1792 would have been quite the place to be. The age of reason is in full swing, revolutions are erupting, the printing press is on fire with new ideas. The issue is most of those ideas that are now challenging the status quo are doing so mainly and only for men. But in the midst of this
Not for men, by men. Men come up with the new ideas.
Enlightenment, we get one woman who writes what many would consider the first great feminist manifesto, a vindication of the rights of woman. Her name is Mary Wollstonecraft, and her demands are simple: equality, not...
I'm going to debunk you right here. If she's going to be about equality, then Wollstonecraft demand women sign up for conscription like the men do. Did she demand that? No, she didn't. Mindshift. I want to call you Minecraft. Mindshift. So she's not for that. Debunked just like that.
superiority, not privilege, just a desire for women not to be treated as pretty ornaments or some kind of moral guardian, but as
Really pretty ornaments. Well, then how come women are so into it? Even now, how long ago is that? Early 1800s. Here we are, 20 years later. The gals still love doing it. How many makeup tutorials can we find on YouTube? Just curious. Sorry, dressing up and showing off beauty is what women do. It's pretty obvious.
equal,
It's not mandated by men.
rational humans. She dared to say what was pretty crazy at the time, that reason is not just for men, that morality is not submission, and virtue is not obedience. And of course, her ideas were scandalous, not just politically, but also religiously. So that's what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover what happens when you challenge a system rooted in not just tradition, but spiritual doctrine, and what it can teach us today for this unfinished fight between...
But feminists are traditionalist. Feminists are traditionalist, dude. Wollstonecraft wasn't fighting against tradition. Women already had rights that men lacked. They didn't have to go to conscription. They never got shanghaied. They didn't have to go into the coal mines and get black lung like the men. If you found a person with black lung from the 1800s, it was a man, 100% of the time. They already had, you know, privileges that men just lacked way back then. So she's not going for equality. Women never have.
reason and gendered faith. And something I've been wanting to point out here, I'm trying to cover it more, I did so with Hitchens and Bertrand Russell on my last episode, is that none of these people are perfect. I'm not trying to claim they are. Most people aren't trying.
Oh, by the way, if feminists are for equality, like you claim, how come they're against shared parenting? Because that would be equality, wouldn't it? No, they like child support where men pay all their wealth to women simply because the woman decided to have a child. I mean, on the face of this, you are wrong.
Trying to claim they are. And unlike religious heroes who have to have their reputations upheld perfectly and all of their misdeeds swept under the rug and tried to be erased, we...
Well, all depends on it all depends on what religion. I mean, Heracles, he had all kinds of defects. Oh, what's that biblical one where the guy was it Sheba? He saw his one of his men, his wife, up on the roof. and he ended up trying to kill the man off so he can have her for himself. They didn't really sweep that under the rug, did they?
We can talk about these people and their flaws. Most of these people are indeed still a product of their time and place, and there's some things that Mary gets wrong here. But what I try to focus on in this series are the great minds that were able to, despite their current circumstance, move progress forward, even if just a little. It's more than most of us could ever do.
No, no, they aren't. They're a regressive movement. Feminism is a regressive hate movement. So they didn't progress anything.
In our lifetime. And I think that it should be a guide for us, even if they're not perfect, because nobody is. So we will cover her flaws as well. Flaws that, by the way, were attributed to most men without a care in the world, which kind of just proves her point. But we're going to dive in here. I want to start by setting the stage, talking about the cultural context at that time and women's role both in politics and religion. Before I do, a cute story. I have to talk about my kids sometimes.
Yeah.
How this came up, why I wanted to speak with her, is I was watching Little Women with my kids, the newest one with Florence Pugh and Saoirse Ronan, not the 1996 one, which is also great. I love that story in general, especially fun to watch it with my daughter and see these four very different types of women.
Okay, woman worshiper right here. He's he's got the wife he worships and his daughter who he worships. Hey, dude, can I ask you something? If you're so much for equality, why don't you become a house husband? Why don't you go to your wife and say, "Hey, sweetheart, for generations, women have been housewives. Why don't I just leech off you and you become the primary caregiver? Or not primary breadwinner." But you know that she would dump you then. So the genders aren't equal, and you know it.
And one of the opening scenes that caught both of my kids off guard was the struggle of Joe's character in trying to be published, specifically due to being a female. And so we were kind of talking about that, and back
Published. She struggled to get to be a writer. We all want to be writers and rock stars, right? She doesn't struggle to be a bricklayer. I want to build the best wall ever. All the hardworking, grimy stuff, never a fantasy for these gals, right?
then it was different. Well, why dad? And just beautiful to see the innocence of children who otherwise would never consider that one sex should be less than another. This is something we did to ourselves and that we have had to teach others to continue to do.
But this one sex is less than the other. Men had to deal with conscription and working in mines and being shanghaied. All the responsibilities and dangers were heaped on men's shoulders. There was never equality between the sexes. And you know it.
That's not the point. So we're talking about females in writing. And so I tell my daughter the example of Mary Shelley, who at 17, maybe 18, wrote Frankenstein. And what a huge...
Yeah, and she got published, didn't she? That was in the early 1800s. So women can get themselves published. They just have to have the quality of their work. No one stopped her, did they?
Huge hit it is, and I showed her my copy on the bookshelf, and it was just a fun way to explore these ideas with her. And then I thought of her mother, who is Mary Wollstonecraft, which many people don't recognize, who actually died shortly after giving birth to Mary Shelley.
Oh, by the way, you know, her father was also a feminist, and he was all for Mary doing her thing, except for this. When she was sleeping around with one of her guy friends, he wanted her to get married. That is to say, he wanted the guy she was sleeping with to marry her. He, a male feminist, was a traditionalist when it came to men. All this free love bullshit disappeared when you realize, no, I want this guy shackled down. Because feminism is a traditional hate movement. It's regressive.
Amazing what was carried in those genes, and of course, the influence still from her father, who has a unique story in his own right. And then Mary Shelley, of course, got the last name from marrying Percy Shelley, who I covered in this episode. It's also interconnected and cool to see this happen, but
Married them? Oh, really? I thought she was a feminist. She was against all that traditionalism. Having a guy look after her.
we'll get back on track here. So let's talk about 18th century England at this time. It is simply steeped in a Christian moral framework. It didn't matter if you were Anglican, Puritan, or Catholic. The role of women was extremely consistent. Obey God by obeying your husband. This is your place. This is what makes you good. This is how you add value. Be a proper and prim wife. Produce children. It's a story as old as time, and you don't need religion to have these rules enforced, but many religions do. No wonder they were so embraced by so many patriarchal type men.
Really? The reason why women love the church so much, dude, is because those rules aren't enforced. Well, what rules are the modern day church forcing on women? None. And I have to say, there's very good reason why they put those limitations on women, or tried to, at the very least, right? Let's see. Where are we here? Oh yeah. Here's one of my videos in my important videos playlist. BBC uses Sarah Everard's murder to strip men of their rights. In this case, call for a 6 p.m. curfew for innocent men. So a man murdered a woman, and the women in power wanted to make a curfew for all men, even though it has nothing to do with them. Now, look at this too. Alex Cat. Riding feminists beat man on streets in Mexico. Let's take a look at this. These are feminists. Destroying property. Why are they destroying property? Why are they becoming a bunch of vandals? Hey, how come the police aren't stopping them? Oh yeah, they're smashed up the place. Oh look, I think they're going to attack the police here. They're attacking the police with hammers. Can I ask you something? Mindshift? Could a group of men who are protesting hit the police with hammers and not get brutally beaten and then arrested? Seems to me there are double standards for the genders. But it's in women's favor, isn't it? But also, more to the point, that when women get a chance to be in power, what they do is they attack men. When men are in power, they look after women. When women are in power, they attack men. We see how it's going in real life right now. So their limitations they placed on these women in the past made sense.
The Christian ideal woman is drawn biblically from two examples. You have Eve and you have Mary. Paul makes sure that we know that the reason he limits women's power is not because he was talking to women at that time in that church and it was a one-off, but no, because Eve was the first to sin. It was her curiosity and disobedience that brought sin and death into the world. Eve is the warning tale for the dangers of women unleashed. But then you have the contrast with Mary, mother of Jesus, chaste and virgin, obedient and silent, a pure vessel for God to work through, who cares about her desires. She was there to serve, to help.
She was there to serve? What'd she do? She got knocked up. The common woman does that, dude. If we were going to honor Mary, how come she wasn't up on that cross? If this is about equality, why didn't God just, hey, you don't have to give birth to anybody. Mary, you can be my stand-in. Mary, you can get beaten up and tortured to death. Notice that doesn't happen to the girls. So yeah, things are unequal, but in favor of the women, right?
Help create space for a man that would go on to do something greater. I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah, he's going to be sacrificed. Women give birth to men because the men get sacrificed. And you're going to try and paint that as a bonus for men?
These points. This is the thinking of the day. It is the thinking still for a lot of Christians today. So these two women give us kind of our theological bookends into the spectrum of what a woman can be or should be, and thus how we should be controlling women's behavior, especially through shame, modesty, and silence. Again, going back to that Paul example.
So you're suggesting that if a woman behaves badly, she shouldn't be shamed? Really? So where is it here? This kind of behavior shouldn't get shamed? These women belong behind bars, and you're not even allowed to shame them? This woman definitely needs shaming and firing. She needs to be kicked out of uh, her place of authority because she's harmful to society. And if it's a patriarchy, how come these women get away with all this?
Example, let a woman learn in full submission. I permit no woman to teach or to have authority over man. She is to keep silent. These are the words of the New Testament, Paul, where we get most of our ideas about Christianity. Then if you go back to the Old Testament, we can get,
Well, we have female teachers and they downmark boys on purpose. So they were right to say that, weren't they?
a better vision for what an ideal woman is. And this is typically referred to as the Proverbs 31 woman. She rises early, she manages her household, she submits to her husband, and she fears the Lord. There's more there, but those are the main points. This is what you want when seeking out your wife. This is
So you want a good person who's willing to work for a living. Boy, that's a high bar.
how women were to raise their daughters so that they could become good wives. And we still have the Christian sermons and the catechisms and the tracts from this time. We know that a woman's value was directly tied to her virtue, to her piety, to her deference toward men. And a woman with too much knowledge, remember the sin of Eve, that's a very dangerous thing. Again, Paul warns us if a woman wants to learn something, she should not raise her hand or stand up in the church. She should quietly, after the fact, ask her husband. Do not seek outside knowledge. It's going to lead to horrendous things if you are a woman, that is, like
Just a minute.
pride, rebellion, witchcraft even. See,
Well, there is rebellion, isn't there? Is this not rebellion here? And it's rebellion towards what? Nothing. This is an act of hatred towards men. Men haven't done anything to these women. So it's an act of hatred, aggression against the men in their society. Right? How about men failing in education, right? How come it's just this generation that this happened? Men got dumber this generation? No. No, because women have been given a leg up. But again, female teachers downgrade boys on purpose out of hostility. So everything they claim is actually based on just basic knowledge of male and female psychology. I mean, we see it in reality right now before our eyes. Are you in denial of reality? Mindshift?
this video here for how the Puritans really took that to heart. So,
Oh, wow. Guys love this. The Salem witch trials. Now, of course, male witches were killed too, but they erased them, right? They can find this one time in history where actually some women suffered some persecution. Finally. Now, I want to tell you, dude, how come that this is witch hunt is happening still for men? Pedophile hunters. Canada police arrest pedophile hunting group over child abuse image. The rise of the pedophile hunters. And we all know for a fact that when they go hunting for pedophiles, they're hunting for male pedophiles. They don't care about the women. This is a manhunt. So all you're doing by showing this is showing just how rare anywhere or anytime women have been, you know, centered for their gender.
Getting to Wollstonecraft, she recognizes that this is not merely a cultural issue, that it is.
Oh, by the way, and again, they focused on women because they feared what women might do, right? Where are we? Where are we? Yeah, they feared what women might do. Right? Men have a perfect right to fear women because, dude, we are not equal. Men, like you, worship women. Women do not worship men. Women actually have an innate contempt for us. That's not based on anything, any fact. So men should fear women. That's for sure.
Rooted so much deeper, a moral and theological system designed purposely to keep women intellectually dependent on men. Now, I want to be clear,
Not dependent on men. It stopped them from attacking men.
The basis for this channel, she didn't go on to be some great advocate against religion. She never claimed atheism or anything like that.
Of course not. Women love religion. They love the idea that they're going to live forever in paradise and that there's something special about them. And in the meanwhile, the religions don't really put anything, they don't put any limitations on them. Like what you've been talking about are just words. Actions matter. In the modern day church, how are women held back? They might be sermonized to, but there's no consequences. So, I mean, you're just wrong about these things. By the way, Mindshift, this is another reason why in the ancient world they focused on men. Women retire early. Women tend to retire earlier than men, despite living longer and often working fewer years. This trend is observed globally and can be attributed to factors like women more likely to take on the primary caregiving roles. Well, the simple fact is women can retire earlier because they can retire earlier. Your wife could probably become a housewife. Say, I'm going to retire. Meanwhile, you can't do that to her. So that's why in the past they focused on men, because they said, we know that the burdens of society are going to be on men's shoulders. They can put the yoke on men. You won't be able to do it with women. Again, the genders aren't equal, and it's men that are beneath, not women.
But in her writings, we can absolutely see that she recognized the church's role, scripture's role, religion's role in this suppression. And she just couldn't stand it, this idea of needing to be passive instead of proactive. Beautiful, but not brilliant. Obedient, not opinionated. What man wants that? And again, she's attacking the religious and the secular, whoever's in power, whoever is continuing this narrative. She talks about how they work together to raise women not to be thinking beings, but charming objects. All she wanted was autonomy. A quote from her, taught from their.
Well, why didn't she just get a real job? She didn't have to get married. She just could have gotten a real job, take care of herself. She's not arguing for equality or autonomy. She's arguing for men to give women free rights. That's what she's arguing for. Hey, dude, mind shift. Do you know that there were female blacksmiths in the day? No one stopped them from being blacksmiths. They did exist, but they were very rare because women didn't want to do that hard manual labor. They already had autonomy, but they also wanted a man to serve them. Just like you, like again, if you ever lose your job, you'll probably lose your wife. You're there to serve.
Infancy that beauty is woman's scepter, the mind shapes itself to the body, and roaming round its gilt cage only seeks to adorn its prison. Beautiful writing, instead of just saying they want to keep women dumb and young and pretty and brainless, which is
Nonsense. They simply put, some kind of limitations on their behavior. We definitely have to. We can't behave however we want. Same with them.
essentially what this is saying. She saw that Christian virtue, as taught to women, because it was different than the Christian virtue that was taught to men, had nothing to do with moral agency, but everything to do with submission, and worse, masquerading it as some kind of sanctity. So we're going to dive into her book here for just a second, but before we do, let's just lay out her...
It wasn't a masquerade. It wasn't a masquerade, dude. Because, look, this is what happens when women get in power. They attack men. So it was self-preservation.
Demands really simply. What are her main ideas? Well, one, she's really caught up with the idea of virtue, what it means to be virtuous in general for a person, but also specific.
How many women fought to work in the coal mines? I want to be autonomous and work with it. If you went and looked in history and found someone who had black lung, 100% it was a guy. The people who suffered from black lung were men, period.
Specifically to how women need to shift their idea of what it means to be virtuous, to go against the grain of what men have been teaching them. And she argues that virtue is something that needs to be chosen through rational thinking instead of what it was actually done with, which is imposed by fear, and shame, and guilt. I would say this is a...
So again, women, when they behave badly, where are they? They shouldn't have shame and guilt and fear. There should be no fear of consequences for bad actions. Well, you're very one-sided.
Wonderful argument against religion in general, where essentially virtue is obedience to God in all of its different forms and all the horror that can come from that. No, think for yourself, rationalize. What does it actually mean? How should one actually behave in the world? How do you orient?
Okay, well, why aren't you thinking and rationalizing for yourself? Why did you jump on a feminist bandwagon and let them tell you how to think? Why aren't you looking at basic history that we understand? Here's another one about the basic history. Where is she here? I got to bring this up again. Hey, right underneath that is the Scum Manifesto. Scum stands for cutting up men. So women show what's on their minds. And that was second wave feminism. You can't look at the history and come to a conclusion.
and your own thinking and morality. She wanted women to be taught how to think, not how to please. She wanted to ground morality in reason, like we talked about, instead of in submission. And she wanted to teach virtue as a strength of character, not just that blind obedience. Again, this is true for everyone for all time, but this is the uphill battle that she is facing specifically for women in her time and place. She argued that real morality could not exist without autonomy. Another quote here, "The being cannot be termed rational or virtuous who obeys any authority but that of reason." So again, not just a critique on women's roles.
But we do have to obey authorities. The police exist. That's why we don't run red lights and speed like crazy. People do need other people to put limitations on us, or we run riot. You think women should be given an exception just because they're female?
But on Christian virtue on the whole. So let's move on and talk about the book that started it all, A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. This is
Vindication. Make me puke.
clearly playing off of her contemporary, Thomas Paine's Rights of Man. And we're going to do an...
Really? This is so typical. So she saw what a man wrote. So the man came up with the idea, and she copied. What did Esther Villar say about her own gender? That women do not create, they merely copy what men do. Right.
Entire episode on Thomas Paine, by the way, because it's true, the Enlightenment is alive with ideas of liberty and equality and freedom of thought. But Wollstonecraft noticed a glaring omission. Half of humanity was being left out of the discussion, and thus her reasoning...
No, they weren't. No, they weren't. You just said Mary Shelley, she got published. She got her thoughts out there. They just have to actually put the work in and have the talent.
For writing her book. Now, the subject matter was radical enough, but it's not just that, it's the strategy in which she approached it. She used the very weapons of the Enlightenment against this crowd. Logic, reason, consistency, and natural rights theory, exposing the
phone's calling. Sorry about that.
Unfortunate hypocrisy of these male philosophers. And so that's...
No, they weren't being hypocritical at all. You're the hypocrite. You're talking about a gender, the female gender, that has so many more rights and privileges than us men throughout all history. And here a woman wants even more. And you're supporting a hate movement. That's what you're doing. You're supporting a hate movement.
A big part of it, but she also attacks the clergy and the politicians who have definitely done their part as well. The male philosophers were at least starting to get out from under this thumb of oppression, but only looking out for themselves. Now, Mary would make this same error later.
I told you that. When they say the freedom of man, man stands for both genders. But any kind of specific limitations they put on the female gender has proven to be the correct way to go.
Later, it's one of the flaws I'm going to talk about. I'm going to save that. But no one's perfect here. Everyone is just trying to move an inch, not excusing it, just giving some color to the argument here. And I want to share this next quote because one of the things I hate most is often when the topic of feminism, which is such a triggering word these days, gets brought up, people will think, oh, those stupid feminists, they just want power. They're just mad. They're just feeling left out and now they want their...
No. I don't say that. I said, these are monsters. These are hate mongers. And they want to harm me for no other reason that I was born male. That's what I say. And yeah, I do get triggered. You know how black men get triggered when you call them the N-word? I get triggered when you bring up feminism. It's the same feeling, dude. Matter of fact, let me show you something. Where are we here? Got a few Man. Oh, here we are. To support Amber Heard, you know that Amber Heard abused Johnny Depp, and it was proven so. And yet, dozens of feminist organizations signing an open letter. Feminist organizations giving their support to Amber Heard despite evidence. See, that's multiple organizations, not just individuals, entire organizations supporting a woman who attacked a man. And they know by the evidence that she was guilty. So their actions speak for themselves. Now, you say you're all about reason and looking at things. Did you ignore this that was, that was been going on for 2 years or something like that? Did you not look into it? No, because you're interested in pushing this false narrative, this hateful feminist false narrative.
Vengeance. And maybe that's true for some women somewhere sometime, but good Lord, your early feminist here could not have been more clear that all they want is equality. Listen to.
Well, you're lying, dude. You're lying. Did they sign up for conscription? When men first got the vote, they had to sign up for conscription. Did these women say that's what we're going to do? No. A lot of women didn't want the vote because they were afraid of conscription. And they only went for it when they realized they weren't going to be held to the same standards as the men. So you're just wrong on its face.
This. I speak collectively of the whole sex. I do not wish them to have power over men, but over themselves. This is the perfect.
Well, I just proved to you with that Depp Heard case that is a bold-faced lie. They do want power over men. They want the power, women, to have the power to abuse men and it not be illegal.
Quote, to explain feminism in its proper place. It is only about equality. And I know I'm a man.
Well, here you are. When you talk about the flaws, you're going to contradict yourself.
And speaking about this, but I am part of a human race that I see so clearly, especially after leaving the indoctrination of the church.
So you left the indoctrination of the church, but you haven't left the indoctrination of woman worship. Even though I am a man, I'm just a lesser individual. I'm going to try and speak on these issues, but I shouldn't be allowed because I was born with a dick. Right.
We're all the same. And I'm so lucky to be in the position that I am to be aware of this so easily. So give me no credit for this. The people on top seem to always think that they are being oppressed when the people on the bottom simply wish for equality. What is that?
Yeah, that's what we men have to suffer. Women are on top, and we, of course, are being treated as the oppressors. That's right. Let me show you something else. The Lovely Bones author apologizes to wrongly convicted man. Her apologies mean shit. This man was falsely accused and he was jailed. Men cannot do that to women. Men can't make up a story about a woman and the police automatically just arrest her, and throw her in jail forever. This is a one-sided gender issue. That man is old now. He'll never get his youth back. He's only got one life to live.
Phrase, equality feels like oppression to those in privilege, something to that effect. It just.
Yeah, and that's the way it is for men. And this woman was lying. She was gaslighting. And you, being a typical female worshiper, swallowed the gaslighting.
This means that everybody should be treated as if they are their own person. So for that reason, I love this quote from her. putting it all in perspective. And her main claim is very simple, but very powerful. If reason is what makes us human, and men claim women are human, then to deny women autonomy and education is
But they're not doing that. Women have more freedom than men.
to violate reason itself. Gotcha. What are they going to say back to that? You can't sit there and advocate like they were for the self-empowerment of free thinking and education and reason for all when what they meant by all was not always all. So getting
Well, I'll tell you now, these women are definitely against men doing the same. Young men are disproportionately failing in education compared to women. Why is that? Because female teachers downgrade boys on purpose out of hostility towards them. There are quotas in education for women. Meanwhile, men, the universities have become hostile to men. That's why they're telling guys to go into the trades now. So in actuality, in people's action, men are we're the ones who get oppressed.
kind of into the religious trap of it all, Wollstonecraft was very aware that religion is not simply a belief system.
Oh, here's another thing. How come women don't get into STEM? Uh, People want women in STEM fields. They just don't go. They're not interested. So why would men? Why is it taking away at women's autonomy for men to say no? Let's educate men. For example, if you want a bridge built, how many women are going to be out there to do it? Also, when they're retiring early, right? Hey, women retire early, so you're halfway through this bridge, making a dam, let's say, or a bridge, and then the woman decides to say, "No, I've been working like 50-hour weeks constantly. I'm tired of this. I'm 45. I got a man who doesn't care if I work or not. I'm just going to retire halfway through the project," right? Like this is why society, if it's smart, will focus on men because they know they can put a yoke on us. They can't do it for women.
That it was part of the scaffolding that upheld gender inequality. She knew the verses, as everyone at that time did, because they were preached constantly from the pulpit to reinforce this kind of order. In Ephesians 5:22, where wives are told to submit to their husbands. Now,
That never happened, though. You think men and women weren't fighting like cats and dogs behind closed doors? You didn't think women were convincing their husbands to do this, that, or the other thing? Whatever words they use, it's what happens in practice that matters.
not in general, but as you do the Lord. This is giving
Okay,
God.
enough of this. This is just gibberish. Let's go to the flaws.
Wollstonecraft thinking was powerful, and it was radical for her time, but she wasn't.
No, it wasn't powerful. It was bigoted. It was commonplace. Women leeching off men has been commonplace since the dawn of the human race.
Wasn't always inclusive, and it's hard to believe with such clear reason and rationality
So they weren't always inclusive. Wow. In spite of their rationality. Right.
that she didn't look out for poorer women or laborers. She mainly focused on middle class women, making the
There's a reason for that, dude. Because these women, where are we? These women, notice when they LARP as the 1800s, they never chose a working class woman's outfit. Women are all about status. That's why they always larp as women who are from the upper crust. And during these times, the actual time, these upper crust women did not want the women beneath them to be equal to them. You know, if we're if everyone's equals, no one's exceptional. No one's super, as they say, right? If everyone's super, nobody's super. And here's another thing. The suffragettes joined up with the KKK, and they didn't want black men to have the vote. So they were racist too. Why? Because a hate movement is regressive. They're not progressive. You're not arguing for progression. You're arguing for regression.
The own category error that her male counterparts were making about females in general. She didn't speak meaningfully on race or colonialism. Seems like a huge missed opportunity for someone so forward advancing, for bringing in an entire second group of people into the conversation.
No, dude. She didn't miss anything. And women have always been a part of the conversation, except for when war broke out or hardship. Then the gals would be like, okay, you guys handle it.
Like to think it was by design, that she knew it was already a challenge what she was bringing up, and so she just wanted to start the dominoes. But
Cope. So this woman shows her true colors, and now you're saying, oh, I better make an excuse for that. Again, how do you explain stuff like this? How do you explain stuff like this? These feminist organizations are actually showing their true colors now. So why are you going back and guessing about the past when you have the future, or it's just the future, the present, this to go by their actual actions? You don't have to guess what Wollstonecraft actually thought, because her contemporaries tell you what they think and what their motivations are and what their goals are.
maybe she suffered from the same limitations of her time and place. A question that has been asked of her, and I struggle with how fair it is was she really fighting then for equality in general, for women broadly, or just rational women who could assimilate into society at the same mode of male enlightenment ideas?
Well, you're completely ignorant then. I don't know how much of it's ignorance and how much is it just straight up denial. Because again, this is what feminism is about. It was there for all of us to see. How long did this trial go on? 1 year, 2 years? And we saw the actions of the feminist organizations. So, are you saying you never heard of the Depp Heard trial? You've never heard of it? I'm beginning to disbelieve you. Okay, that's what we got. The backlash. Let's go to the backlash.
There. Society's response in general was pretty tough. She's mocked and ridiculed and, of course, branded as immoral. How dare a woman think or expect?
No, dude. She was branded as immoral because they are immoral. Where are they? This is immorality. This is immorality. This is immorality. This is immorality. It's branded immoral because it is immoral.
Equality. Her husband piles on after her death, where he compiles an account of her affairs and her illegitimate child. And that was just the gotcha moment that everyone, especially the religious, needed. See, look what happens when a woman thinks. Look what happens when you give them a little bit of freedom. So she becomes a cautionary tale. She reinforced the stereotype to them of the fallen woman Eve versus the virtuous woman Mary. She's an Eve.
Well, to be honest, dude, giving birth to another person, you've got to look after them. You got to be responsible for them. That's what it is. You don't have to worry about it now because they got child support. Like you've got daughters, right? Your wife could just take a bad spell and decide she doesn't like your face anymore, make you pay child support. So that's why they don't care anymore. The women in the past shamed women because they were saying, "Oh, here's this child that someone has to look after, and I don't want to have to look after them." But now they've got child support, which is male enslavement. Then they go, "Oh yeah, the problem's taken care of." Now let's see. Legacy? No, don't even bother with the legacy. I already showed you what the legacy is. Let's see, what's final thoughts?
But I digress. I was so happy to share this video with you to teach you and hopefully expose some of you to this wonderful thinker. I hope that we can take her example.
This man hater? That's the only reason men need to be exposed to her is to educate them on what women were actually like and what they were doing to attack men.
Like I hope with everybody that I cover, the good parts, that we can use them as examples for deconstruction in general, for free thinking.
Okay, there's nothing, he has nothing to say. Why do you have nothing to say? Because everything you say is a lie. You're pushing the feminist narrative. It's a hate movement. You're supporting a hate movement against me simply because of the way I was born. You want to throw yourself off a cliff? Go ahead. But, buddy, you're attacking me now. You're making yourself an enemy to me. So that's why I'm calling you out. Now, let's see how this guy responds, if ever he does.